Hold on a second. No one graduates until Security Guy Radio says so.
Welcome to a fit version of Security Guy Radio with Chuck, Dumbbell Harold, and Paul.
I'm still tally-ho.
You got to change. You got to come up with something. How come I come up with this thing every week and you just are tally-ho? What's that? Talking to microphone, please.
It's because I'm actually using the dumbbells to keep fit.
Oh, don't even start with me.
You know?
I'm only 10 pounds off my fighting weight at the police department.
Yeah, fighting weight. Yeah.
That's true. It's true. How much more do you weigh since you were?
No, I've actually lost 10 pounds in the last 2 months trying to sell a house and buying a house.
Now, that's not that English pound thing with stones and all that other crazy
stones.
king stuff,
Yeah.
is it, right? Because you're really,
stones
that's 5
and
ounces
pounds.
or something?
Yeah. Proper weight.
Well, it's just a coincidence. Once again, you have to be talking about how heavy you are and how overweight you are and out of shape you are and how in shape I am and not
solid,
overweight.
Mate. Solid.
Well, rugby player right, versus a soccer player. Because our show just happens to be about physical fitness standards for security officers. It's always a coincidence.
Are there any physical fitness standards for security officers?
Well, we shall find out because our experts are here from Webster University. And our third part of our four. Brian, get on the microphone here. This is debate number 3.
It's number 4.
It is?
I think I think we should do something on mental fitness.
Well, you stole my joke. Thank you very much.
Number 3 if you want, Chuck.
Yeah, I saw it coming.
It's my show. I can say 3 if I want to. Yeah. All right? But it is, in fact, the 4th version of our debate with Webster University and Professor Chris Silva. And Chris, tell me if I'm exaggerating, because I tend to do that. These fine ladies and gentlemen have to come in here and do this, or you're not going to pass the class. Is that correct?
This is part of the final project.
It's quite an honor to do that. So
the honor's all ours.
I'm a guy that didn't go to college. I think that's very flattering to me. So thank you very much. So we're actually part of university curriculum, is the way to say it. Is that correct?
Indeed. And, I'd be the first to say that, nothing beats experience. And, we come here.
What the hell would you come here for?
Well, I didn't say good or
wrong
bad experience.
Yeah.
Well, what's our motto? We protect you with our voice because it's cheaper that way.
Yeah.
And because everybody stopped paying us to do so. So that's why we're here on the radio. But I do agree with you. Experience does really mean quite a bit. The gray hair helps sometimes, right? Your age, experience. There's assumptions made on that.
I thought you dyed it grey.
Do I need to tell the Grecian formula story? Do I? Paul shows up with a red beard and brown hair one day, and it wasn't because of Grecian formula. Do I need to talk about that? Okay, we won't talk about that. But my mental illness and state of mind could be a factor in this. But I mean, I didn't go to college, right? I'm School of Hard Knocks, kicking, scratching my way, and there's something to be said about that. But there's also something to be said about getting a good academic base to start, because I think the good academic base allows you to think and reason probably more effectively, right? And start to gather your knowledge. Where my knowledge was all gathered by, getting hit in the head with a brick or failing all the time, right? So there's 2 sides to that. We just think this is a great relationship because I learned something, you guys learned something. I think that's what it's all about. Tell me what's going on at Webster University. We've talked about how big the school is and what kind of reach it has. Interestingly enough, I posted last Monday's video, and I got a guy that works at Aon, which is a risk management company, big risk management operation. And he happened to go to Webster. That's where he got his degree from. And he's one of the top evaluators for risk management for insurance companies and things like that. And he loved the show. And he said, being a Webster alumni, he thought that was a great idea. So I guess your reach is kind of far. What else does the university, besides security, what else do they give degrees in?
Well, the standard fields of study. What are really strong in the local market are the things that affect that local Air Force base, specifically their defense contract managing. And that's home to that particular specialty of the Air Force there in El Segundo.
So the university their curriculum is based on locations, specifically what that market needs?
Just like any business.
Oh, very interesting.
I mean, obviously it's a nonprofit, but
right.
They're geared towards what is needed.
But needed locally. Right. Whereas, UCLA, you get a degree in whatever your specialty is, and you can use that other areas. It's more general. But
sure.
We're talking about this is kind of zooming in on.
But any college, any university is going to, put emphasis on what's getting them, the head count, which is their payday. So, the hottest trends, whether it's IT, whether it's cybersecurity, that's where their emphasis is going to go, because that's what's going to bring in their students.
Why are they nonprofit, by the way? But
it's an educational institution.
But it's not religious, though.
No.
So, well, not all educational institutions are nonprofit necessarily.
True. There are for-profits, especially in the local market. A lot of those that cater to more the security guard and entry-level type situations.
Tell me some other degrees that Webster offers around the world that people might be interested in.
Everything from business management to degrees in logistic contracting, everything from psychology and medicine through the whole gamut of higher education.
How many students do they put through worldwide a year?
I'd have to look into that. I think it's 22,000.
Oh, that's interesting. So smaller classes, smaller areas, but spread out all over the place.
That's right.
How do you actually pick who you will have in your class? I mean, are these, do you get a resume?
There's a, the requirements for attending a higher level class would be completing the prerequisites. So this is what we call the 5020 class. A prerequisite there is the introduction to security management.
So, but as a professor, do you actually get to sort of pick who will be in your program, or?
Generally, I take the students that apply and infer my knowledge into them and bring out a better trained security professional.
Well, today we're going to talk about physical fitness standards for security officers, and our two guests today are Antonio Armstrong and Mr. Daniel Moreno from Webster University, both in the graduate program to obtain their master's degree. And we'll start with Daniel. What branch of service did you come from, Daniel?
Actually, I'm not in the service. I never have been. I'm on the civilian side.
Oh, is that unusual, Chris, by the way? Is that
typically the exception to the rule in my classes?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
a great addition to the class, I might add.
Daniel, what's your background then?
My background is in the security field. I've had about 3 years of working in corporate security for a financial institution, and previous to that, I was in retail loss prevention.
And where'd you get your degree from originally to qualify for this class?
My bachelor's degree, I got it from University of Phoenix.
And what was that in?
Criminal justice.
Oh, interesting.
And what brought you into the security field?
Just my current line of work. I wanted to be able to stand out more and promote. And
what originally brought you into the security field now? Why choose?
Yeah, you choose criminal justice. Did you want to be a police officer at first?
Yeah, originally my goal is to be a police officer.
Oh, down the road you want to do that?
Yes, I'm actually processing.
Oh, good.
Now.
For who?
For Los Angeles County Sheriffs.
Okay.
Oh, well, it just so happens we know the next sheriff that's going to be elected.
Absolutely.
We had him on our show.
Unless something terrible happens.
On top of that, I'm also a volunteer with the Sheriff's Department.
Oh, good.
For almost 4 years now.
Not a reserve, but just a
just a volunteer. Yeah.
Well, good for you. That's excellent.
It's a great department.
And Mr. Antonio Armstrong, that's you.
No.
That's where you say yes.
Yes, sir.
Not sir. That's my father's name.
Although he does look old.
What? I know. It's white hair.
It's a white hair.
What's your background? Military?
Yes, sir. I was in the Air Force.
Don't tell me 20 years, by the way, because I won't.
Close, about 15 years.
Oh my God, the guy looks like he's 30 years old. They're physically fit. Thus
must be
their
looked
paper.
after.
Well,
the physically fit.
It is a lot of training and things like that.
Stuff.
What did you do in the Air Force?
My first job in Air Force, I was actually aircraft armament systems. So I loaded munitions on bombers and fighters. And then after the first 5 years, I switched to become a paralegal.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
What a difference.
Yeah, there is a switch. Why?
Wanted more of a challenge as far as being able to go out into different areas and have different career paths. So it was pretty interesting because when I switched jobs, I actually got to be a security manager in a couple of offices I was in. Also here in LA when I was moved here because it's a smaller office, I actually ended up having a lot of extra duties. One of them was security manager. Also, during exercises, I had certain duties as far as security and, making sure everybody was trained and being knowledgeable of, what the procedures were, what we had to do, and also Just getting to know different areas
up
of
to
the
that
law.
point,
And
did you have any security training, or
some?
Or did they just say you're the security manager?
No, they actually sent us to training for security manager. It just depends on what aspect that we actually are going to be dealing with as far as security manager.
Did you ever load ordnance on an A-10 Warthog?
Actually, that was my first aircraft I worked.
It's the best airplane made. I use that airplane in training all the time because I teach my guards to be an A-10 Warthog because it's designed to what? Not get shot down. It's the only airplane they built.
Toughest jet in the Air Force.
Build me an airplane that won't get shot down. And you can't build all airplanes that way because you sacrifice speed for things like that. But that's my favorite. I have a Franklin Mint model. I think it's a great airplane.
That's actually a good model.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Yeah, it's a fascinating
Until I
airplane.
knocked it off the table once.
Yeah, well, models don't hold as well as the aircraft do. All right, so gentlemen, we're going to talk about your paper that you wrote for the class. Now, your introduction, this is an excellent question. Why is there an absence of physical fitness standards for security officers? And that's a great question.
Because none of them would pass.
That's kind of the simple
That's
answer.
it.
Thanks for joining us, folks. Tune in next week. I think we need to go a little deeper than that, perhaps. It is a good question, and Paul and I have a lot of opinions on this. But let's start with you, Antonio. Tell me why you think there are not standards, as there are in military, because we can compare police and military as having these standards, but we get to the civilian area, we don't have it, and distinguish why.
Well, me and Daniel were talking a little bit about that. I was going to touch a little bit more on my experience being in the military, and he was going to touch a little bit more on the civilian side. But
handle the military. That's
but
fine.
As far as the military, we have standards that we have set basically for us, saying you have to meet a certain goal as far as fitness standards to do your job. So if you're not meeting those standards, then that means you're not doing your job.
Continually meeting them.
You have to
on a monthly basis?
For us, initially when I first joined the military, it was a yearly basis. We had a certain height and weight requirement, so we had to stay within those standards.
Right.
So if you deviated from that, you're basically put on like a type of probationary period where you have to get within those standards within a certain amount of time. And if you didn't achieve that, they were either going to discharge you or some type of disciplinary action was going to take place. So,
so
after probably about the first 8 years I was in, the Air Force went to a different standard because they saw a lot of guys basically getting out of shape and having health issues and things like that. You know, that costs the government money, things of that nature, taxpayer money as well, because you have to take care of those folks later on down the line. So they focused more on our, physical fitness, setting standards, and they basically set it by your age group. So whatever age group, if you have the older folks that have been in the military, they have to set, reach a certain standard. Then it goes down to, I think it was between 18 to 25 range.
Well, that's fair.
Those kids have certain standards. And same thing with your basic training. You have to meet those requirements to be in the military.
Because why?
Because you can't even be in the military.
No, I know that, but what's the military's objective in setting that standard? Why they?
Oh, because you have to be physically fit to take care of the person next to you. So if you don't, if you're not in shape and you can't take care of the person next to you, then
so when
the
zombie apocalypse hits, you guys can handle it. And I'm being half funny because the objective of the military is to make parking lots out of things and then rebuild and win the war. Yes. And you can't do that if we're all tubby and out of shape. Yeah. So that is why that standard is required, and I think it's in line with the mission.
Yes, and I think that's across the board with any branch of the military, not just the Air Force.
So, Daniel, tell me about the civilian side. So you have some experience with the Sheriff's Department as a volunteer. You want to get into law enforcement. I'm sure you understand why those standards apply, and why do you think that is a requirement? Well, by the way, it's not an absolute requirement. I'll tell you that later, but tell me why you think it's a good requirement going in initially.
Well, just going in initially, being fit is an overall, I would say, expectation.
Why, though? In that profession, why is that required?
To be able to protect yourself out in the field.
Yeah, that's right. Yourself first.
Yeah, yourself first, and then the public second, because you are in a position of protecting the public.
Right, because if you're overcome physically, I can't protect the public.
Exactly.
So I got to be able to take care of my business first, and then be able to take care of the people next to me. That's very important. Hold that thought. We're going to follow that through a little more when we get back. Back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's security.guy.radio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. Back in a minute. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's security.guy.radio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Oh, and Instagram as well. Back with our guests from Webster University, Mr. Antonio Armstrong and Daniel Moreno, both graduate students in the... Chris, help me out there. Is that the Security and Business Administration? What's the title?
So the Security Administration and Management School falls under the School of Business and Technology.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So it's a business degree in a way.
Right.
Very interesting. Okay. All right. So at the break there, Daniel, we cut you off talking about the physical fitness standards in the civilian side. So we talked to Antonio about his military requirements for physical fitness. Talk to me about what you discussed at the break, where you've had some experience testing for police entrance exams and some other things.
Well, my experience is testing for police entrance exams. Have been a few times. I've tested with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and as well as Orange County Sheriff's, and they're both have some similarities as far as a timed 1.5 mile run, push-ups, jumping over 6-foot wall,
right?
Body drag.
Yep, body drag, pushing a car maybe.
Yeah, pushing a car, and those type of similarities. And as I was told before, those are just the beginning steps of meeting the minimum requirements to being able to pass the physical requirements of a police academy.
So my experience with probably, I don't know, I must have tested with 10 or 15 police departments before I got hired. When I went to Rio Hondo pre-service and I put myself through. That obstacle course you just described was going on in 1983. Mm-hmm. They've lowered it since in some academies, Rio Hondo in particular, because some people couldn't get over the wall because their ass was too fat. They couldn't carry it over to the side, right? So no, you don't have to jump over the wall because we're going to So they lowered some of those physical fitness standards. And I think I've seen that trend since my career. But why is that required, Daniel? Why do we have to have police officers to be able to do that? Like you said earlier.
To be able to stay in shape, to be able to protect yourself.
That's right.
Against any type of dangers that you're faced in the field.
Absolute requirement. And if my partner's out of shape, I don't have confidence that he's got my back and can take care of me, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, not all confrontations, in fact, most confrontations with police officers and civilians are not physical. You talk your way out of it first, right? But rubber hits the road. You got to do it. You got to be able to take care of yourself. So we've defined military as needing that requirement. We've defined police, civilian needing that. Explain to me now, in the paper, why we need to attribute this to security officers, because I'm going to say they have a completely different function and need over civilian and police. So, Antonio, you take that one first.
I would say for security officers, the reason they need that standard is, like I said, mostly to protect themselves.
Okay.
Because
what are they protecting themselves against?
Things like I don't know if you saw like the videos and stuff on YouTube with the kids were going around just knocking out the old folks and doing things of that nature.
The knockout game.
Yeah, the knockout game. So just things of that nature. You're in changing times and cultures and things that are going on that didn't normally go on a long time ago. So things like that, if the security guard's life is, if they take it to another level and they start.
So does that happen to a security guard very often?
Depending if the guy's a older guy or if it's they see like a little strongly, small guy, they think they could, probably take or something like that. Things like that, kids in the mall playing around, horsing around, horseplay, things like that. A lot of bullying and things of that nature. If they think they can do it, I think if people think they can get away with certain things, they're going to do it. So I think if you set some standard to where people have to take care of themselves and know how to take care of themselves, it'll work out better for people in the long run, especially the employer, because they won't have to worry about their employees as much if they're physically fit and they know they can actually handle themselves.
But you're talking more about appearance than whether or not they're physically fit, correct?
Yeah.
If you're saying that bully or whatever won't have a go at that security officer, why won't they? Is it because of their appearance or because he can run, a
and push a car and jump over a wall?
Yeah, I mean, does he know that? Has he seen that guard do that? I mean, I've seen some people that look physically fit, but they're not. Right? Now you look at,
Go ahead, say it.
Chuck.
Go ahead.
All right.
And I think that's kind of like a double-edged sword. You can, like you say, you can look physically fit, but not actually be fit, because you see, if the guy smokes or whatever the case may be. But those things you're not going to know about the person's background.
So we're really talking about appearances, right?
It's a little bit more about their appearance and can they actually take care of themselves.
So Daniel, is your classmate there being prejudicial in his writing of this paper, judging people only on how they appear, not how they can actually perform the job? Because I got to tell you, I have some guards that worked for me over the years that are 5 feet tall, that are female, that could kick my ass over a tea kettle in a second. But you wouldn't think talking to them, because that's a mental state of being, right? As you are military prepared for the mental state of being. So I hear you, but could we be setting a standard that could get you in trouble with the EEOC because you're really just saying, the way you look, I don't like it, and we got to make you look like this. And you could look better, but be no more effective.
I guess it would be prejudicial because, I mean, you can't underestimate or overestimate somebody just based on their looks.
It's difficult, right? And we make those decisions every day, by the way. You walk down the street and you see some guy looking at you and he pulls out a gun and you discriminate against him and walk across the street because he's got a gun, or he says, I'm going to rob your whatever, right? You did point out something here I was reading about the EEOC standards, where if it's not flat out traditional discrimination, as we all know, based on race, creed, religion, things, there's discrimination based upon a disparate treatment or disparate impact. So if we start training all the guards with physical fitness, and there's one that's 300 pounds that just can't get over the wall, are we picking on that person because of their weight? What do you think?
It could be a factor, but again, if they're not able to meet the standards for that, then they could be more likely reassigned to another type of position or job where they wouldn't have to come across those type of standards.
So would it surprise you, Antonio, if I told you that in California, the basic training for a security guard emphasizes time and time again, your primary function is to observe and report. And in fact, there's specific training that tells you not to physically engage people, do not touch people, do not challenge people. Would that surprise you to hear that?
No, actually, me and Daniel were actually talking about it a little bit before the show. That's their primary duty, is just to observe.
Right. Now, in defense of yourself, that's an individual choice, I think. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, no. I mean, the majority, because of liability, etc., you don't want the guard getting involved.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's an individual choice for the guard to defend themselves. And if he gets attacked, even though he's observing and reporting, and he just arbitrarily gets attacked and he can't defend himself, that's on him, I think. And just because I have muscles and I'm 6 feet tall and
doesn't mean
200 pounds doesn't mean I can take somebody on. I'll tell you something interesting. You probably saw this. Remember when we had special events? Queen Mary, remember? So the Queen Mary, we did something called Ink and Iron. And it's all a bunch of bikers and tattoos and nice people. There's a stereotype. They're basically all nice people. But,
it's a very interesting special event to go to.
Yeah, but they get, they get drinking like any big group does, and they get problems, right? So Paul and I would staff the most quiet, let's say trained or small. We did not put giant bouncers in there. Why? Why do you think I didn't put bouncers in there, Daniel?
You make it look discreet, because if you put giant bouncers in there, probably going to have people get intimidated or try to challenge them.
Challenge
them.
Exactly, right? So one thing I could say about physical fitness, if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger and you're a bodybuilder, and the other guy at the Ink and Iron show is the same thing, he might think, I'm going to challenge that guy. What's the threat to me as a patron if you're 5 feet tall and you're professional and you speak well and you don't bother people? Say, sir, I need you to move over here. I'm not going to do it. Okay, let me call the cops and let them handle it, right? So I hear where you're going on that, but I'm a little worried about and you wrote about this, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act prohibits disparaging treatment and disparaging impact discrimination. So on your argument, you are saying we should have it, but you have this pitfall where this could happen. So, Antonio, what would you say would cause that?
The pitfalls for
the disparaging treatment. So I have a guard company, and all of a sudden I say, new standards, y'all got to jump over the wall. But I got somebody that's 300 pounds that wears a size triple X shirt, and it ain't going to happen. Do I fire him?
Well, that's the tricky part, because it'll seem like you're signaling that one particular individual out, which could give him grounds to come back and sue, which would cost the company money. And if he goes to the press and say he's getting signaled out, it could really just snowball and go downhill.
So how do you recommend we handle that? How could you handle that?
Well, one way would be to either change the standard to where, it would be equal across the board for everybody. Like you said, if the wall is 6 feet, maybe you can adjust it and make it lower to where he could get over it.
So what use is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's the tricky part. Is
if you're 300 pounds, you might not be able to jump on the curb.
Yeah, that's the tricky part, is trying to find a standard to set.
But then I've got to tell you, I've met some 300-pound people that can move faster than.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and like you said, you can look at a person and you can say, "Oh man, he's 300 pounds," but this guy's moving and he's,
There's that word again. Look.
Yeah,
appearance, right?
The appearance can be like he might look a certain way. Yeah, but that's why it's hard to kind of come up with a standard to say we're going to do it X way versus Y way.
Well, from what I'm hearing, every time we talk about this, we're going back to
looks
appearances
as opposed to fitness
more than fitness. And that's what I keep on hearing is the whole reason for this is what you look like, not what you can actually do. Because we believe that a security officer that looks muscular and 6 foot tall and all the rest of it.
Thank you for describing.
Really. Dreamer. That will make a big difference.
Well, I think it does. I mean, you have a tubby motor cop. It doesn't look good. And you get into stereotypes, right? So one of my favorite cartoons of all time was Animaniacs. You ever watch Animaniacs? Okay. And what do they have? They had the 3 cartoon characters from the 30s running around Warner Brothers Studios being chased by who? What are you guys doing there? What are you guys doing in the boat? Get out of here, you guys. The security guard, right? The stereotypical wise guy, big giant pelly, not too bright. That's what Hollywood thinks about guards, right?
Yeah.
Is that unfounded? Not really. I mean, there are people like that in guard work or any profession, right? So I'm going to have to disagree with you a little bit that the physical fitness standard is going to help improve their performance, but I think cosmetically, absolutely. Paul, would you agree with that part?
I would disagree with it.
You would disagree that it helps them cosmetically?
I would disagree with physical fitness standards helps them look different, because a physical fitness standard may not make them look any difference whatsoever.
Oh, that's a very good point. I
right.
defer to your age and knowledge on that. Back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. See, I got that down now, don't I?
Yeah, it's good.
Back in a minute.
What's Instagram?
Hi, everyone.
Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguyradio.com with your host, Chuck Dumbbell Harold and Paul Tellyho Bristow.
Paul Pump It Up Bristow.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's better. Finally. Back talking about physical fitness standards for security officers with Antonio Armstrong, Daniel Marino of Webster University graduate program for their master's degree in security administration. So we left off with this concept that not just your paper, but I think a general consensus about appearances and stereotypes falls down to looks. So if we're going to try and get people physically fit to change their appearance, it won't necessarily change their appearance just because they're physically fit, because you can be heavy and in shape or skinny and in shape. And if you're trying to set a physical standard, you're going to have to convince me that being a better physical specimen helps you do your job better in security. And I'm going to argue that I don't think it's a factor. If you can't get out of your own way and leave the building in a fire, that's a problem, right? And if you can't walk up and down the stairs and your job says you must walk up and down stairs, that's a problem. But not so sure that the fitness part applies, especially police departments. After you get hired, most police departments don't have a yearly physical. They found out they get too many workers' comp claims, because if I get hurt going over the wall at 55, workers' comp claim, right? So those are business decisions you guys need to think about. But again, I may have no idea what I'm talking about because I just have a radio show.
I think the current business climate would support some kind of physical fitness regardless of the profession, simply because of the rising medical costs and the fact that would keep those at bay, because of the fact that you're establishing a baseline and helping yourself be more healthy.
Well, we talked at the break briefly. Could we be ourselves a little prejudiced about these things because we live in L.A., which is bling bling capital of the world, and everything here is about appearances? It really is. I've traveled quite a bit, and everybody has a BMW because it looks good, not because they can afford it. I mean, it's a sad truth, right? And we make decisions based on what we see, because 85% of what we learn is visual to begin with. And we're going to make our decisions looking at something. So again, you got to think about those things. Another thing you got to think about from a business standard, and these are practical things because not all people are evil that make money. A 300-pound guard, and I had one once, takes a XXXXX, and they don't even make it, by the way. And what am I going to have a custom uniform made for the guy because he doesn't fit the uniform? So my decision might not be because he's overweight. It's just because I can't put him into the place I need him to be in. How we handled this, and I think how a lot of companies handle this, and Chris, jump on this if you think this is correct. In your job description, oftentimes a smart company will write, must be able to walk up 5 flights of stairs, must be able to lift 60 pounds and carry it for 5 minutes. Must be, what else, Paul? Give me some other of those things.
Yeah, must be able to bend.
Dance the Charleston at midnight and all these things, right? That's a roundabout way of setting a physical fitness standard without setting a physical fitness standard.
Now, let me ask you now, if you had somebody come in that was 300 pound that could do all that, which people can, what would you do?
I just checked my liability insurance, and I think it's up to date. So I'm going to say I probably wouldn't hire them. And I got to tell you, because I am concerned that they're going to be able to stand up and walk around the post and do all those kind of things. Because
so does that, but then from a liability standard, does that then expose you?
Oh, it probably does. I think so. And,
to a lawsuit?
And I'm going to be prejudiced there a little bit because I'm also going to be concerned that my client's going to say, that guy looks like the guard from Warner Brothers' Animaniacs cartoon, right? And I'm going to get flack for it. Yeah, I'm going to be concerned about it. Now, I have hired people like that, and I do because there are excellent guards all over the place. But when we did let's just say a very large Hollywood event for 5 years, if anybody was over a certain weight, they'd send him home. It's like, look how the guy looks. He's an excellent guy. He shows up on time. He's never late. He does his job. That used to fry me. I got to tell you, it made me upset. So it's situational. So what do you guys think about, instead of requiring a physical fitness standard, what if we worked on job descriptions specifically for specific posts in specific places that in a roundabout way achieve the same thing? Would we be filtering people by putting, you must walk up 50 flights of stairs every day, and the 300-pound guy is not going to probably walk up 30 flights of stairs unless he wants to get in shape? What do you think, Daniel?
Well, that's kind of a challenge if it's the person's looking for that type of job. Then if they read the job description and they see something that they know in the back of their head that they can't comply with, then it'll probably be something that would persuade them or keep them from applying to that job. So,
am I being discriminatory if I put a standard in for a particular job?
No, not discriminatory. It's just the type of employee that you're looking for. Something that fits what the company is looking for. Somebody to represent the company. Somebody to be like.
By the way, to stand, that job description must be a job description. You can't say, I need some guy to run 300 steps a day when in fact the job that they're doing has got nothing to do with 300 steps.
Oh, well, that you get in trouble for that.
Be careful.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in the guard business, what's interesting, that's a challenge, by the way. I had 100 clients at one time, and basically those are 100 different businesses that you run simultaneously, and each business has a different requirement. This one's a parking lot, this one's a Hollywood show, this is a studio, and so on. Each job description is technically different for what their duties are. However, Paul, would you agree that the basics of the job can be handled in a job description, and the specific duties can be handled separately?
Yeah.
So I think all guards should probably be able to stand for 4 hours at a time without sitting. Okay. Well, we got to put the 10-minute breaks in, but be able to stand, be able to walk 5 flights of stairs. I mean, maybe stairs aren't fair, but help me out here. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So if you got the minimum things in there, you'd in essence be creating a physical fitness test before you gave it to them. And since they're not hired yet, you're not getting sued because now I'm making you walk up the stairs. And on the other side of it, if I take Chris off post A and put him on post B, and post B has a bunch of stairs and you weigh 300 pounds, I'm going to get sued because I put you on a post you can't do.
But did we all agree that the reason that we want to do this is actually because of appearances?
Well,
is that the agreement?
I'm not sure I would agree, but I mean, I think it's
That's
a
what
big
it comes
factor.
down to.
I think it's a big factor.
All right. So how do you then take care of the chap who's the pear shape?
Well, let's
who
take a
will
look.
Never
at,
look good in a uniform.
You look at the marketing, regardless of the company, and it's always going to have that one stock guy that middle-aged gentleman, looks great in the uniform. Everything's perfectly aligned. I don't think there's a marketing bit that is out there that doesn't have that guy or his brother or sister.
Well,
it's funny you should say that.
Interestingly enough, when we were sitting down before the show, I pulled up a certain company out of San Diego that's marketing.
That they have a physical fitness
We do
standard.
this physical, and it comes from the Air Force and this, that, and the other.
It looked really good on the website.
Yeah, and on the website, he's a rather overweight
The guy was 300 pounds easy, standing next to a fit guy.
Now, he may have done all these tests, but very interesting marketing material.
They need to hire a different marketing person. But I see what you're saying. So, again, you can have all these tests, and you can be fit cardio-wise, you can be fit muscular-wise, you can be fit stamina-wise.
And you look awful.
And you look awful. Like yourself, for example.
Yeah,
You just happen to have all those things, and and here I look nice and thin with the white hair, but I'm a mess inside. I'm falling apart and disintegrating every single day. So, I don't know. It's a tough one, you guys. We talked, who's this guy Tufano you quoted in here about standards? Tell me about that guy. You were citing his paper he wrote about why aren't there standards.
Actually, that was a question for my partner, Tony. That was his part of the paper.
Tony, defend this guy. Why are we putting him in here, Mr. Tufano, in his article? He says, why aren't there standards? And he cites that recent security organizations don't have fitness standards for their security guards force, often falls back to the company's reluctance to include adequate fitness standards into policies and procedures. And they decide against this in the early budget, and quite often, more than anything else, there is resistance from their human resources personnel. I don't think that's where it comes from. I mean, if you're starting to make physical fitness requirements and, I don't know, what are you going to do? You're going to go home and put the guy in The Biggest Loser and get him into shape, and then he trips and falls on a banana peel and he's using it for workers' comp? I mean, where's the line?
I think most companies have got physical fitness requirements, but the problem is most companies don't test for it before they hire.
Yeah, but isn't the requirement just in the job description like we talked about?
Yeah, but you don't. Most companies don't actually test for it.
Right. I think those exist. Those must climb X number of stairs and be able to hold however many pounds for a package and be seated for however long. Those are simply in there for a liability standpoint. God forbid something should happen.
Exactly. They're taking your word for it that you can do it, and so when you can't do it, you lie to me on application, I'm firing you. That's just my evil background from HR.
Or for when somebody goes out on a workman's comp.
That's right.
That's right.
Or disability, they've got to get back, and that's when they test.
Well, you claimed you could do this, and you're not doing it. Did you lie to me? These things are real-world things that come up. All right, there's the segue music back in a minute on Security Guy Radio. That's securityguy.radio.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. Welcome back to Security Guy Radio. That's securityguy.radio.com. With our special guests from Webster University, Professor Chris Silva, Antonio Armstrong, Dana Moreno, graduate students adamantly defending their paper on physical fitness standards for security officers. So, Mr. Bristow, pick up your thought at the break you had there.
God, I can't remember.
This is, well, see, there you go. It just proves, I think they're winning with that.
That's right. They're beating me down.
I mean, the break was only 3 minutes. So.
What was we talking about?
Well, we're talking about this Tufano guy, and he wrote an article about this. And then, Antonio, you were going to kind of...
Yeah, I was going to say...
Why you were citing him and what his argument was.
He was, I think, more so he was more talking about that the reason why we don't have any standards is most companies from a financial standpoint, what's going to be the most costly? Is it going to be more costly for them to try to change their policy and their standards? Like you said, you could try to change the job description of the folks, but what's going to be the backlash to that? Are you going to have lawsuits? Are you going to have, like you said, workers' comp claims because people can't meet the standards? Because you have to think about the people you haven't hired, and you have to think about the people that are currently employed.
Well, a lot of companies, and we did this at some police departments, you take the old guys, and they don't get the test because when you hired them, they didn't need it. So you're being consistent in their career. But a brand new guy that gets hired, he's got to take the test. And that's been held up to be fair and reasonable and legal and whatever you want to call it. So that's one way you can handle it, is you start the system slowly with as a new hire comes in, and then the old people, retire, and by, 10 years from now, you have a whole generation of people that are meeting those standards. But there's such high turnover in the guard business. I mean, I've heard things as high as 200% a year, 300% a year for big giant car companies, right? 400 was Securitas up to 400%.
Yeah, 400%.
So if Securitas has 100,000 employees and it's 400%, they're hiring 400,000 people a year. That's a lot of turnover. So, am I going to invest in that guy? And he's only there 11 months. I think an average guard stays at a guard company about 11 months or something like that, right? So these are decisions in the security part of the business that are difficult to make. And by the way, police don't have that kind of attrition or turnover, but they have a very high rate of injuries because you're wearing 35 pounds of gear and your body's not made for that, and so on and so forth, right? So this guy's right on both sides. I don't think it's a money issue. I think it's an administration issue. How do you manage all those moving parts?
Well, but that's a money issue.
No, I can put this infrastructure into my existing management program and decide, okay, by the way, you can change somebody's job description. That's okay. Your job now requires you to walk up those stairs because the client just built a stairwell. Well, I can't do that. Then I don't have a job for you. I'm sorry.
But
if you can get by with that.
I mean, surely if you're a contract guard
Don't
company,
call me Shirley.
If you're a contract guard company, you've got to somehow administer and pay for these physical checks. So how do you pay for that? How would you pay for it? If you was a contract guard company, how do you actually start these physical checks?
Easy to say, Fox is rich, they'll pay for it. But let's talk about a contract guard company with minimum wage guards and low profit margins.
I guess you would pass that cost on to the consumer.
I don't want to pay an extra 5 cents on my bill.
They don't.
They don't, but I mean, the cost has to come from somewhere. So, I mean, if it's not...
Well, it ain't going to come from me. I'm the client.
See, the reason they hire a guard company in the first place is because it's cheaper than doing it themselves. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, that's one consideration. Uh-huh. We had your fellow students on here a couple weeks ago talking about the minimum wage issue. And if I, pay everybody X amount of money and increase... If I have 1,000 hours a week and I increase it by $5 an hour, I'm just charging my client $5,000 more a week just so the guard can have a minimum wage. That ain't going to happen. People say, guess what? I don't want guards anymore. I'm going to hire a camera because a camera doesn't need a raise. So I'm just asking you guys to think this one through. I mean, again, I believe in it. I think it's a good premise, but you got to think of the business part of it and say, how are we going to make it happen?
Well, I'm getting back to Mr. Tufano's argument, saying that it's more to do with the legal issues. I don't think it is. I think it's a cost issue.
But you've got to be able to sell the benefits of it. That's the bottom line, because it's just like anything. There's got to be something in it if you're going to pass that cost on.
Well, that's a cost-benefit analysis. I get it. I see it for the military. I see it for the police department. I see it maybe for, what's another application where that's necessary?
Yeah, ambulance, whatever.
Jockeys.
ET, yeah.
Firemen.
Firemen, jockeys, yeah. I mean, jockey has to weigh a certain amount of weight or he can't get... No, I'm serious. You can't, right? So he's got to be at a certain weight, and that's a requirement.
As a client, all I expect you to do is to bring a security officer to my facility that can do his job.
That can observe and report.
I don't care how you do that, and you're not going to charge me for it.
I think that, when you take a look at the marketing standpoint and you're staffing that... the receptionist in the front lobby, I think that's where you're going to have to, again, going back to appearances, use that as a marketing tool.
Well, you do say in here that that raising these standards would allow them to take the security officer more seriously and perhaps be more effective in the event of an emergency or everyday situation. That's a leadership issue, and we talked at the break briefly. I teach 4 things to my guards. The 4 A's, I call it: attitude, aptitude, appearance, and accountability, right? Attitude is not it's a state of readiness in your mind, and it's also that everybody on the team is going the same way. Aptitude is your training. Appearance, right, is so important. If you show up and your uniform is pressed, your shoes are cleaned, you say, "Good morning, sir," "Yes, ma'am," and you look good, you've just succeeded by 51%. You can get by the rest of the day as long as you don't open your mouth and put your foot in it. Really, if you look good, people are going to take you seriously. So I do agree that this is an important issue. I'm just not sure how we get there through costs make it a return on the investment. So that's where I'm coming from on that. So if we were going to set some industry standards, Antonio, what would they be? What do you think a minimum industry standard for guards' physical fitness would be? Bare bones. Knock it down so it's the cheapest possible program I can put in place in my company. Convince me to do it.
For me, I did a little research on different departments like the Air Marshals, the Secret Service, police, military, and like I said, we have certain standards that we have to meet when I joined the military. So you had to be able to do X amount of push-ups, X amount of sit-ups, be able to run a certain distance without pretty much being winded, and they give you a time limit. And I think with those standards, because it's not biased to any person of any weight, height, or whatever your athletic ability is, as long as you can meet within that window and they can meet that standard, I think that's the best route to go.
Guess who's going to sue you for that? Me. Why? Look at my white hair. Military standards, police standards, physical fitness standards often start at the entry level to get you in the academy because you're young, fit. They don't put 50-year-olds on the front line for a good reason, all right? So if I have a guard force that's diverse, it's going to have 18-year-olds and it's going to have 60-year-olds. And are you telling me I got to make the 60-year-old have the same standard as the 18-year-old? A minimum standard I'm talking about.
If it's at a minimum standard, it shouldn't be an issue.
I'm telling you.
If the standard's so high to where...
Well, that's the trick.
Like we were talking about appearances, if this 300-pound person, they're not going to be able to do 100 push-ups in a minute, which is one of the standards within the Secret Service. You have to do X amount of push-ups within 1 minute.
Right, but that's because people are trying to kill the president, and you got to punch him in the nose. But a guard is supposed to observe and report. So why does my guard have to do 100 push-ups?
No, that's what I'm saying. If the standard's low, it shouldn't matter what that person's age. You won't necessarily be discriminating, so you don't have to worry about lawsuits.
I don't know, Paul. What do you think?
Well, again, I'll get to the point of why I do it.
Right.
What the hell are you testing for then?
I mean, if it's going to be such a low standard, then it's just a standard that's...
if you take it so low that Chuck can do it, I mean, why do it?
It's true.
Well, it also helps you weed out, if you only, like I said, depending on economic times, if you only have a certain amount of positions for people, there are some people that can't do 10 push-ups, and they're, slim and trim.
Okay, but you really could get into a serious age discrimination thing. Anybody over 40 is having disparaged, I can't pronounce that word, not treated properly, because somebody over 40 can't do 250 sit-ups probably compared to a 20-year-old. And there's plenty of 20-year-olds, by the way, that can't do one sit-up, okay? I'm finding that actually more often. Yeah. I'm in better shape than 20-year-olds I'm finding. But I digress. So here's how I might handle that. I might say in your hiring requirements that your height and weight must be proportionate to, what's the term they use? Height and weight must be proportionate to your ability to perform the duties, or your body fat ratio must not exceed 9% or something. I don't know. It's not against the law yet to discriminate against people overweight, but if you put them into an age category, it is. If you put them into a race category, it is. Right? So what if I'm recruiting from a certain area for a certain job, and everybody in there is a certain ethnicity, and everybody's overweight? They're going to turn around and say, it's not because I'm overweight, it's because of my ethnicity. I mean, you can see these things because people are creative. You can sue a cheese sandwich in Los Angeles and win, okay? So this is what you have to think about. So again, I agree with this kind of stuff, but I don't see how you do it. I don't see how you get it
there's
done.
a big area in here I do not agree with, and I know we're running out of time, but workers' compensation. I do not agree with the fact that being more physically fit drops your workman's compensation claims.
Because? Why don't you believe it?
Because it doesn't make any difference as to whether you're not. It's the training, it's the safety training that works for dropping workman's comp claims.
No, that's true, safety. I mean, we've had claims for diabetes on the job, right?
Yeah. And the fitter you are, the more stupid things you're going to try.
Well, that's right, because you have a tombstone courage. That's right. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry we ran out of time. What do you guys think? Did you learn something?
Yes, I really did.
Yes,
Are you going to change your paper before you turn it in to Chris there?
I think that's a little late for that.
Oh, is it too late? Okay, well, oh boy, hope we didn't lower your grade somehow. But I say they pass, Paul.
Yes.
I say they pass.
It's a good idea.
All right, tune in next week for our, Brian, fifth, is that 5 fingers? Okay, for our 5th installment of our debate with Webster University on Security Guy Radio. Join us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and of course, Instagram and SecurityGuyRadio.com. Until next Monday, cheers.
Cheers.